Revenge Tales by Nanny. Please like, comment, and subscribe.
The email hit my inbox at 8:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was already at my desk, coffee in hand, finishing the monthly sales report that nobody had asked me to do, but everyone pretended they needed by Friday. The email was from Whitmore, my boss. The subject line read, "Your role going forward. Meeting at 9 o'clock." I didn't feel nervous. That's important to understand. I didn't feel anything yet. I just stared at the words on my screen while my coworkers shuffled in around me, already complaining about the fluorescent lights and the broken printer on the third floor. I had worked at Pinnacle Solutions for almost 7 years. 7 years of showing up early, staying late, fixing problems nobody else could fix, and being thanked with a title that never seemed to change and a salary that never seemed to grow. I knew what was coming before I read the rest of his message. I just didn't know how far he was willing to go to make it happen. The message said, "We need to discuss restructuring. It's time we looked at some operational efficiency. See you in the conference room." Operational efficiency. Those 2 words meant everything and nothing. I closed my laptop and headed upstairs, past the water cooler where 2 junior analysts were gossiping about the new hire, past the supply closet that always smelled like old paper and broken dreams, and into the cold conference room where Whitmore was already waiting, tapping his pen against his leather notebook like he had somewhere more important to be. Whitmore was the kind of boss that looked important without actually doing anything. He was in his early 40s, always wore suits that cost more than my weekly grocery budget, and smiled in a way that made you feel like he was laughing at a joke you didn't understand. He had arrived at Pinnacle Solutions 3 years ago, right after the last round of layoffs. He called himself a strategic efficiency officer, which really meant he fired people and called it progress. The conference room was cold. Too cold. I had always hated that room. The walls were white, the table was glass, and there was nowhere to hide. I sat down across from him and waited. Whitmore didn't start talking right away. He was the type who used silence as a weapon. He would let it stretch between us until you felt like you had to fill it with an apology or an explanation for something you hadn't even done wrong yet. "Your performance has been solid," he finally said, not looking at me. He was writing something in his notebook. "But we're moving in a new direction. We need people who are more aligned with our vision. People who can think bigger." He looked up at me then, and his eyes were empty. No anger, no guilt, just nothing. "We're going to have to let you go. 2 weeks severance. We'll announce it on Friday." 2 weeks. 7 years of my life, condensed into 2 weeks of severance pay. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just nodded and said okay, because that's what I had learned to do. Keep your face smooth.
Keep your voice steady.
Let them think they have one. I stood up and walked out of the conference room while Whitmore was still writing in his notebook, completely unaware of what he had just set in motion. I grew up in a house where you didn't talk about money. My dad was in business, serious business, but he never made it seem important. He would come home from his office downtown and ask about my day like he had spent his time doing anything less significant than running half the city's investment portfolio. My mom had died when I was 12, and after that, Dad and I had an understanding. We didn't ask questions about each other's lives that we didn't want to answer. When I turned 18, Dad sat me down in his office and handed me a thick folder filled with documents. Stock certificates, ownership agreements, board meeting minutes, things that looked important and official. "This is yours," he said. "But I need you to promise me something. You will never tell anyone at your workplace about this. Not your boss, not your coworkers, not even your close friends. This is just between us." I had promised. I was young and confused about why it mattered, but I kept the promise anyway. I had moved through my career at Pinnacle Solutions knowing that I had something in my back pocket, but never using it, never mentioning it, never letting it change how I worked. I showed up every day and did my job well, because that's who I was, not because I needed the paycheck. The knowledge that my dad owned 23% of the company was something I carried like a secret in my chest, and I had never once used it, never once let it comfort me when things got hard. Until now. I walked back to my desk slowly. My coworkers were already whispering. News travels fast in an office, especially bad news, especially news about someone losing their job. I could feel their eyes on me as I gathered my things. Some of them looked sorry. Some of them looked relieved, like my firing somehow made their own positions feel more secure. I didn't blame them. That's how corporate survival works. You step over the people below you and pray nobody is standing above you waiting to do the same. I went home and did something I hadn't done in 7 years. I opened the folder my dad had given me all that time ago. I read through every single document. Stock certificates with my name on them. Board meeting minutes from decisions made in rooms I had never been to. A list of shareholders that looked like a who's who of the city's business elite. And at the very bottom of the last page, a letter in my dad's handwriting. The letter said, "If you ever need this, you know where to find me. But use it carefully. Power is not something you spend. It's something you hold in reserve until the only thing left to spend is integrity." That night, I called my dad for the first time in 6 months. "They fired you?" Dad's voice on the phone was calm, but I could hear something underneath it. Not anger, not surprise. Just recognition, like he had been waiting for this moment, and now that it was here, he could finally move forward with whatever plan he had been holding in his mind. Not fired exactly, I explained. More like terminated. 2 weeks' notice. Whitmore called it restructuring. I was sitting in my apartment, the folder spread out on my coffee table, trying to make sense of documents written in corporate language that felt like a different dialect of English. Dad was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Whitmore Holloway?"
Yes.
"How did you know his name?" I felt something shift in my chest. It was a small moment, but it mattered. My dad knew who my boss was. He had probably known all along. "I know who he is," Dad said. "He was brought in 3 years ago by the interim board. They wanted someone to cut costs. He has done exactly what he was hired to do, cut costs by cutting people. But there are rules about who he can cut and how he can cut them, especially when it comes to shareholders' families." I felt my mouth go dry. "Dad, I need you to be honest with me. Did you know this was going to happen?" "No," he said. "But I suspected it might. That's why I have been having a conversation with several board members over the past 2 months. I was going to wait, but since Whitmore has made his move, it seems we need to move ours faster." "What kind of conversation?" "The kind where I have been asking questions about his hiring practices, his firing practices, and whether they align with the company's values or just his personal preferences." Dad's voice was steady, like he was reading from a script he had written a long time ago. "It seems he has fired 12 people in the last 2 years. All of them were competent. All of them were expensive. And all of them were gone within weeks of his efficiency reviews." I didn't know what to say. My dad was suddenly much more present in my life than he had been in months, and it was because I was about to become a problem he needed to solve. The next morning, I woke up to 17 emails in my inbox. Most of them were from coworkers sending their condolences, their regrets, their hopes that I would land on my feet. Some of them were from clients who had heard that I was leaving. They wanted to know if I was taking my business elsewhere, if I would still consult, if there was any way they could follow me outside of Pinnacle Solutions. One email was from my dad. The subject line read, "Meeting scheduled, Friday, 10 a.m. Conference Room A." There was no message, just the meeting invitation. I knew what was happening. My dad was not the type to let things happen to him. He was the type to make things happen, and he was making his move. I went to the office that Friday morning and tried to act like everything was normal. Whitmore was in his office, behind his glass walls, talking on his phone with his feet up on his desk. He didn't even look at me as I walked past. That was the thing about Whitmore. He had already forgotten about me. I was no longer a problem he needed to solve. I was already solved, already gone, already erased from his mental file of people who mattered. At 9:55 a.m., I got a calendar invitation forwarded to me by the executive assistant. It was for a board emergency meeting scheduled for 10 a.m. in Conference Room A. The attendees included the CEO, the CFO, the board chair, and 3 other board members I didn't recognize. And then at the bottom there was my name. And my dad's name. I felt something shift in my stomach. This was really happening. I walked to conference room A and found my dad standing outside, looking exactly like he always looked, composed, calm, like he was about to have a normal business meeting and not orchestrate the professional downfall of someone who had fired me 3 days ago. He was wearing a gray suit and carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than most cars. "How are you feeling?" he asked me. "Confused," I said honestly. "What is this?" "This," he said, "that is how corporate structure works. So yes, you do answer to shareholders. And right now, this shareholder has some serious questions about your hiring and firing practices." Whitmore left the room, and the moment the door closed, the rest of them looked at my dad like they were trying to figure out whether to fight him or apologize to him. "I am not here to be difficult," my dad said, and he actually sounded like he meant it. "I am here because I believe in treating people fairly. My daughter is a good employee.
She did her job well.
She was fired because she was expensive and competent, and Whitmore wanted to replace her with someone who was neither. That is not how businesses with integrity operate." Franklin cleared his throat. "We appreciate you bringing this to our attention. Of course, we will conduct a thorough investigation into Mr. Holloway's practices. We will also, if you are in agreement, offer your daughter her position back with a formal apology and back pay for the 3 days she has been terminated." My dad looked at me. I could see him asking a question without words. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure what I was agreeing to yet. "We accept the apology," my dad said. "We also require that you implement a formal review process for all future terminations. And we require that you conduct exit interviews with all 12 employees that Mr. Holloway terminated to determine whether there were any violations of employment law." He paused. "And finally, we require that Mr. Holloway's position be put up for a performance review immediately, with a possibility of termination if the board deems his practices to have been inappropriate." Nobody argued. That was the moment I understood something fundamental about power. Real power does not need to scream. It just needs to speak and people listen. The board meeting ended at 10:47 a.m. I had been back in my job for 47 minutes. My dad walked with me to my office, and Whitmore was not in his glass-walled room anymore. His office was empty except for his personal items in a cardboard box, sitting on his desk like a goodbye gift he didn't want to receive. "Is he fired?" I asked my dad. "Not yet," he said. "The board is going to conduct a formal review. But Whitmore made a decision 3 days ago that he thought would cost him nothing. He did not know who you were. He did not know that your family had interests in this company. And that lack of knowledge is going to cost him everything." We walked past my coworkers, and I could feel their eyes on me. They had seen me fired 3 days ago. Now they were seeing me walk back with a man who had apparently just fired the VP of operations. The whispers were going to be loud for a long time. My dad stopped at my desk. He put his hand on my shoulder, and for a moment I felt 12 years old again, like the world was too big, and he was the only thing keeping me safe. "You were right not to tell anyone about my ownership stake," he said. "You earned your way in this company on your own merits. But now I need you to understand something. Power is not something you should be ashamed of. Power is something you should be careful with. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let people think they have more power than they actually have, until the moment comes when you need to remind them that they don't." The investigation took 2 weeks. In those 2 weeks, Whitmore sat in his office with the door closed, waiting to find out whether he still had a job. He didn't come to meetings. He didn't send emails. He just disappeared into his office like a ghost haunting his own career. The board interviewed 12 people. The 12 people that Whitmore had fired over 2 years all told similar stories. They had been let go within days of an efficiency review. They had been told their positions were redundant. They had been given minimal severance and no explanation for why they were being replaced. 2 of them had filed complaints with the state labor department but had gotten scared and dropped the cases. 1 of them had been offered a buyout not to pursue legal action. All of them had been waiting to see if anything would ever be done about it. During those 2 weeks, I went back to my job like I had never left. My clients wanted meetings with me. My coworkers wanted to talk to me, but they didn't know what to say. I had become something different in their eyes. I had become someone with power, and that changed how people treated me. On Friday of the second week, Franklin called an all-hands meeting. He stood up in front of the entire company and announced that Whitmore Holloway had resigned effective immediately. He did not say why. He did not say it was related to my termination or the board's investigation. He just said that Whitmore had decided to pursue other opportunities. Everyone knew that was a lie. Everyone also knew not to say so out loud. I did something that day that I had never done before. I went to Whitmore's office after the announcement and found him packing the last of his things. His cardboard box was full. His desk was empty. His nameplate was already gone from his door. He looked at me, and I could see something like shame in his face, but also anger. The anger was the thing that surprised me. He was angry that he had lost, but he was also angry that he had not seen me coming, that I had somehow beaten him, without even fighting back. "I hope you are happy," he said. "Your daddy came in and destroyed my career." "No," I said. I was not being mean. I was just being honest. "You destroyed your own career. You fired me without cause, without documentation, and without thinking about who I might know. That was your mistake, not mine." He stared at me for a long moment, and then he looked away. He finished putting things in his box and picked it up. He walked past me, without saying another word. I watched him leave, and I felt something that I expected to feel as triumph or satisfaction. Instead, I felt nothing. I felt empty. Winning had felt good for about 5 minutes, and then it had just felt like something that had happened. Like weather. Like a day that came and went. My dad called me that night. He wanted to know how I was feeling. I told him the truth, that I felt tired, and that I was not sure if I wanted to keep working here anymore. That winning against Whitmore had shown me something about the company that I could not unsee. It had shown me that the company was willing to let people like Whitmore rise to power as long as they were making money. And if he had succeeded in firing me, nobody would have cared. The only reason anyone cared was because I had someone powerful behind me. "That is how most things work," my dad said quietly. "Power protects power. That is not a lesson from me. That is just how the world operates." "So, what do I do?" I asked. "That is up to you," he said. "You can stay. You have earned your position back. You have shown this company that you are valuable and competent. Or you can leave. You are not obligated to stay anywhere that does not make you happy just because you have power there." I thought about it for days. I kept showing up to work and doing my job well. I kept being competent and calm and professional. I kept being myself, which was the only thing that had actually mattered all along. The shareholders' stake, the board meeting, the investigation, all of that was just circumstances. It did not change who I was or what I was worth. After a month, I went to Franklin's office and asked for a meeting. He seemed nervous when I walked in, like I was about to tell him that my dad wanted him fired too. I smiled to show him that I was not there to threaten him. "I want to give you my resignation," I said. Franklin's face went pale. "But I thought your father—" "My father has a stake in this company," I said. "But he does not control my life. I am leaving because I want to leave, not because anyone told me to. I am grateful for my position, and I am grateful for the investigation and the support. But I have realized that I want to work somewhere that would have protected me whether or not my father was a shareholder." Franklin started talking about raises and new titles, and anything he could think of to make me stay. But I had already made my decision. I was not running away. I was just moving toward something that seemed better, a company where competence and fairness were the things that mattered, not power and connections. I gave my 2 weeks' notice that day. My coworkers threw me a goodbye party on my last Friday. People who had barely talked to me before suddenly wanted to tell me how much they valued my work and how much they would miss me. That was the thing about power. Once you had it, everyone wanted to be your friend, even if they had been indifferent to you before. Whitmore sent me an email the day after my resignation. It said, "I hope you enjoy your new job. I hope you never have to lean on your father's money again to feel important." I deleted it without responding. He was trying to hurt me, but he could not hurt me anymore because I had stopped caring what he thought about me. My dad helped me look for a new job. We found a smaller company that valued people and treated their employees like human beings instead of costs. The salary was slightly less, but the work was better, and the people were kinder. I started there 2 weeks later, and I did not tell a single person that my father was a shareholder anywhere, that I had family money, or that I had once worked at a company where the VP of operations had tried to destroy me. I just showed up and did the work. And that was enough. 3 months after I left Pinnacle Solutions, I got a text from a friend who still worked there. She sent me my dad called me one day and told me that Pinnacle Solutions had offered to buy out his share. They were paying a price that reflected all the growth and success the company had achieved over the years. He said he was thinking about accepting it. "What do you think I should do?" he asked me. "I think you should do whatever makes you happy," I said. "But I want you to know that I am grateful for what you did for me. You showed me that power is real, and it matters, and sometimes you need it to protect yourself from people who do not have your best interests in mind. But you also showed me that the real power is not in what your father can do for you. It is in what you can do for yourself." My dad did accept the buyout. He called me the day after he signed the papers and said he had made a decision. He was going to give half of the money to charity, and he was going to give the other half to me. He said that money was supposed to be a tool, not an anchor, and he wanted me to use it to build something that mattered. I cried when he said that, not because of the money, but because he was finally treating me like a partner in my own life, not like a person he needed to protect. 5 years after I left Pinnacle Solutions, I was invited to speak at a business conference about ethical hiring practices and workplace fairness. The keynote speaker was Victoria, the board chair from my old company. She talked about how corporate oversight and shareholder involvement had made her company stronger and more ethical. During the panel discussion afterward, someone asked me what I thought the most important thing was for business leaders to remember. I thought about Whitmore and his cardboard box. I thought about my father's quiet power and the way he had used it carefully and only when it mattered. I think the most important thing is to remember that the people who work for you are human beings, I said. They are not costs. They are not redundancies. They are people with families and hopes and the ability to do good work. If you treat them like they matter, they will give you everything they have. If you treat them like they are replaceable, they will leave you or they will stay and hate you. Neither of those things is good for business. Whitmore Holloway never worked in business again. I found out from a friend that he had moved to another city and started working in retail management. I hoped he was better at that job. I hoped he had learned something. But I never checked to verify. That chapter was closed, and I had no reason to keep reading it. What I did know was that I had learned what my father had been trying to teach me all along. That power is just information and leverage, and the most powerful thing you can do is use yours to help people who do not have any. That is what I built my company to do. That is what I continued to do every single day. 6 years after I left Pinnacle Solutions, I was running a company with 45 employees, all of them paid fairly, all of them treated with respect, all of them able to sleep at night knowing that they had not sacrificed their integrity for a paycheck. My father had retired and spent his time volunteering and reading and enjoying a life that was finally free from the pressure of being powerful. And I had learned that the greatest revenge is not destroying your enemy. The greatest revenge is becoming someone so good, so kind, and so fair that your enemy's destruction seems inevitable and sad instead of satisfying. Whitmore had done that to himself. I had just stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own choices. That is the real story. That is what actually happened. And it is worth telling, not because it is dramatic or satisfying, but because it is true.